And now rule 3 is timing. So for pre-exercise, you want an empty stomach, but a full, fuel tank, if you will. And then you want to be properly hydrated. So the timing goes like this: regular meal around 4 hours before, having a regular meal, just like the healthy plate I showed you. If not, maybe a lighter meal, right? Because the general rule is, right, the more time you have before you compete or train, the larger your meal could be. And of course, the opposite is true as well. The less time you have, then of course, the lighter the meal has to be. You don't want food sitting in your stomach. So you might want to also go with a snack 30 to 1 hour before. What do we mean by that? Something that's high carb, moderate protein, easy to digest, like a liquid formula. And then the timing is going to vary. My son can eat a couple hours before a pretty good meal and not have any stomach issues. That's just, trial and error. Okay, options for early morning exercise, right, Neal? You call this what? You call this?
I call it bed to gym or bed to field. Yeah, right. So it's getting athletes up early in the morning isn't easy. But if they've got to practice early, and especially by the time they get to high school or college, if they got an early morning practice, then they eat a big meal before they go to bed, that pre-exercise meal we just looked at. And then after that, they just do their shake in the morning and they're ready to go.
And those are just some ideas for you guys. They might be, if they've got like football in the heat, or, they've got endurance type activity, that you might want to go with a shake and the bagel and the fruit, all 3 of them. It just depends on how much fuel they need, right? Okay, post-exercise, this is what you want. The goals for post-exercise: refill the fuel tanks, right? Replenish that glycogen, get some good protein in for recovery and growth. Your muscles are super sensitive to nutrient uptake. It's the most efficient time frame to replenish and rebuild your glycogen store. So you don't really want to wait that long to replenish. It's critical if you're competing, again, like in basketball. Sometimes they play 3 games a day. So I've got to make sure the refueling happens in between. And what we know in the research is that, having a shake is perfect for that. Put back the fuel in the tank, increase muscle repair, and help immune function. And then, we need that, gram per pound per day. And the shake sort of gives you a good dose of that in an easy, just convenient way if you're especially, going from game to game, et cetera. So after intense exercise, greater than 60 minutes per day where you're depleting glycogen stores or you're playing multiple times a day, you want that snack immediately after. High carbohydrates, have a regular meal, so my kids' routine would look like shake right afterwards, and then we would go eat a regular meal an hour to 2 after that. And then for resistance training, the shake just helps meet daily protein and calorie targets. It's just ground up food, right? It's whey protein derived from milk, so it's really ground up food. And then a regular meal 3 to 4 hours of your previous meal. Here's some ideas, some just common ideas that you could help your kids if you're trying to decide what should my kid eat before or after. These are just common examples you could utilize to help them make good choices. Okay, a Big Mac is not on here, which they can have, just not before a game. Okay, with fluids. I'm going to just briefly go through these. I'm going to give you guys these guidelines so you can download them. But essentially, having heat illness is the #1 reason for cause for injury, not just in youth, but in all ages. So you want to make it a priority to make sure that they're hydrating 2 hours before, having a bottle of water, 15 minutes, sipping on it, and then having it readily available. Now, after exercise is especially critical for people who are exercising in the heat, outside in the heat, in humidity, or they're doing long events, right? So you want to make sure that you replace fluid. So, making sure that you're getting 16 ounces for every pound lost until the urine is pale. And that's really a great indicator is your urine color, right? So if you can look at the top 1 through 3, that's the color of the urine you want to teach kids to look for, like lemonade, essentially. Whereas the darker colors, like the color of apple juice, means they're not adequately hydrated. So there's so many symptoms of dehydration. Obviously headache's a big one. They're complaining of a headache. Being thirsty typically means it's too, they're already somewhat dehydrated. And kids are different than adults because they tolerate heat less efficiently. Their thirst mechanisms can be underdeveloped. So as adults, we want to provide regular water breaks. And I've seen coaches, Neal, you may have too, that restrict water. It's almost like, if you're not, meeting performance goals or trying hard, then you don't get to drink water. But you want to do the opposite. You want to make sure they're hydrating, on a regular basis. Anything you want to add to that, Neal?
No, that's it. I mean, being a youth coach, you assign your assistants to look at every kid to make sure they drink during a water break, because they don't have the same mechanisms yet. They're not mature.
Exactly. Okay, so sources. You don't just get water from water, right? You get it from food. About a third will come from your food, depending. Beverages all contribute to water intake in addition to water. And the requirements in general are between 8 to 15 cups, more if you're active, more if it's hot or humid. Just a general tip to get 2 glasses with every meal and snack. Look for their urine color. Teach your kids to monitor their urine color to be pale yellow like lemonade. Now, what about sports drinks? How do I know if I need a sports drink? When is it indicated? Well, if you're exercising longer than 60 minutes, right, you're doing multiple trainings a day, it's hot or humid, or if your kid's just not eating adequate amount of food during the day, right? Like, kids are notorious for not eating well throughout the day and coming home starving or being hungry during practices. So it's not ideal, but it could be a way to get extra fuel, right? It helps to maintain blood glucose. Actually, hydration occurs better when kids get to sip on sports drinks. And then, the carbs provide the energy for workouts. If you get more than that, like if you try to, drink juice or something, during activity, you're going to cause a stomach ache. And then the electrolytes are needed to help replace those lost in sweat. Some of your kids are heavy sweaters, right? They end up having crusty shirts or whatever. That's the salt. They're losing a lot of salt. So you want to make sure that you replenish with that.
And just a quick note on this to parents that are, if your kid is not exercising, there is absolutely no reason to drink this. In fact, if anything, it's unhealthy for them. This is actually something that when you do sweat a lot and you are not hydrated properly and you're not eating great, these things can be very helpful for a kid growing up. We filled all of our water buckets with half Gatorade, half water. We actually mixed it, so they would actually use it that way, because we're in helmets, we're in full gear and it's 100 degrees outside practicing. So these are important for that type of athlete and so forth, but don't get caught up thinking this is healthy for a sedentary kid or a growing kid. You don't need, this is definitely not counterproductive.
Yeah, and you don't want it to be readily accessible just for them to sip on throughout the day, because what does it do? It displaces. Right, it displaces other stuff they should be consuming, like milk and fruits and vegetables and things like that.